Welcome to this conversation about the PMP exam application. We are here today to talk about this application and how to fill it out. My name is Bill Yates, and I'm going to be your tour guide today. I am serving as Executive Vice President for Velociteach. I've been a part of Velociteach since 2005. This is just a picture of me. So you'll get to know your tour guide and just a couple of awards that our company has won. We've done a lot of training. We know a lot about the PMP and the PMP exam. As a matter of fact, we've written the book on it. My CEO, Andy Crow, has written the book, How to Pass on Your First Try, about the PMP exam. So as you can imagine, we've handled a lot of questions about the PMP exam, especially that tricky application that you have to fill out. So here's our agenda for the day. We're going to talk a little about PMI. I'll let you know what PMI stands for. We'll talk a bit about the PMP credential. And then we're going to talk a lot about the PMP exam application. Then I'll have a few final words about the PMP exam, and we'll recap. And then you'll know more about the PMP exam application and how to fill that thing out. All right, let's jump into it. First of all, who is PMI? PMI is the Project Management Institute. They've been established since 1969, and they're recognized in the globe as the leading project management association. They've created an ANSI standard called the PMBOK Guide. Now, you may have seen this book. It's the latest edition is the 6th edition. It's 756 pages of how to manage a project. Now, it describes a framework, not a methodology. The PMBOK Guide is the global standard for project management, and much of the PMP exam is based on content in the PMBOK Guide. So it's a relevant topic here. Now, PMI offers a number of credentials or certifications. There are actually 8 today. PMP is the key credential. That one they began offering in 1984, but they've got others for program managers, for agile practitioners, for business analysts, for risk professionals. But we're going to focus today on the PMP application for that exam. And again, just so you know, that certification has been around since 1984. All right, so what is the PMP? The Project Management Professional. That's the credential that really sets apart project managers. Many times I like to equate it to accountants receiving their CPA. An accountant goes for the CPA just as a project manager would go for the certification or the credential called the Project Management Professional. Here's some quotes from PMI's website. The last one I really like. As a project management professional, you can work in virtually any industry with any methodology and in any location. So we'll talk more about that, some of the benefits of the PMP, but that gives you a sense for how PMI positions this credential. So why become a PMP? What are the reasons for that? Well, one, employers benefit. When they have project managers that are certified, they benefit. Here's a quote from Pulse of the Profession study put on by PMI in 2015. When more than 1/3 of their project managers are PMP certified, organizations complete more of their projects on time, on budget, and meeting original goals. So they're more likely to have success. So that's one reason for employers to want their project managers to get PMP certified. There are other benefits. It validates your experience and your abilities as a project manager if you have that certification. It also proves your understanding of current tools, processes, and terminology. Now, that last word, terminology, focus on that for a minute. Many times I'll hear companies say to us, hey, we want everybody to get PMP certified because we want our team speaking the same language. So terminology is a big point as well. All right, so the employer's benefit, that's just great. But let's say you're the individual and you're saying, okay, what about me? All right, so what's in it for you? There is a benefit for you as well. Let's just talk very practically here. Here's a quote from a study, the Project Management Salary Survey, and the quote goes like this: among survey respondents to PMI's Earning Power Salary Survey, those with a PMP certification earn or garner a higher salary than those without a PMP certification. And I've highlighted the 23% higher. That's substantial, right? Okay, that sounds too good to be true, maybe? So let's take a look at another source. Here's another source. This is from CIO.com. Here, Sarah White is the author of an article back in January 2018. There, she's identifying the 13 most valuable IT certifications on the market. Here's the list of the 13 top paying certifications. And there's the Project Management Professional, PMP, right there solidly in that list. Okay, so there's motivation for the employer, there's motivation for the individual. So those are reasons to pursue the PMP, but who really should pursue the PMP? Who qualifies for that? One thing to keep in mind, you're not required to have project manager as your title. It doesn't have to be on your business card. You don't have to be called a project manager. That just may be a portion of your job. That certainly was the case for me. That was just a part of what I did as a software consultant, one of the hats that I wore. One of the requirements that you do have is you have to have experience leading and directing projects. We'll have more to say about that. And then just what is a project? Well, PMI defines a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Let's look more at that and see what counts. So what counts as a project? You may be thinking, well, Bill, this is interesting, but I don't know if the work that I've done really would be considered a project by PMI. So let's take a look at that. So PMI says a project creates a unique product, service, or result. A product, for instance, something tangible that you can hold in your hands. It's a component, or it could be a component or enhancement of a product, or it could be a complete standalone item itself. So a product, a service, could be a service or a capability to perform a service. So my project, for instance, could be a business function that supports production or distribution, so it provides some type of service. And then a result, many of the projects that I worked on, they delivered a result. It wasn't something that the customer could hold in their hands, but it was an improvement or an enhancement or some other kind of outcome or capability. So the result, an example there, a research project may explore trends or discover ways to improve a product or a customer service process. So those projects that you work on qualify as long as they create either a unique product, service, or result. Okay, that's all interesting, good stuff to know, but let's get down to the business at hand. Let's talk about the application itself. Okay, so I want you to get comfortable, maybe find a comfortable seat. It looks like a comfortable seat. Maybe with a great view, looking over the water. That's certainly a great case. She looks satisfied, content where she is, comfortable. It's going to take a little bit of time to fill out the application, so she's ready to go. Let's get ready to go. Let's dive in. All right, first things first, and I'll flip over and show you this link, but this is where you want to start. This link to PMI.org, just looking over or flipping over to that. Here's a look of, okay, here is that link, PMI.org. And if I go to this particular page, then it's specific to the PMP credential. And I click on the Apply Now button. When I click on that, and I've already logged in just to speed things along here, I've got access to my PMI and all these different things on the PMI site. I'm going to continue working on the PMP application. This is just to give you a view of what we're going to be referring to. So these are the various steps that we have in our application process. These 8 steps, from contact address and information all the way down to review and submit, those are the steps that we're going to walk through piece by piece. Now, I've done screenshots so that I have something that I can easily share with you. So I'll back away from this now, but you can get a sense for where we're going from PMI's website. So this is how you'll fill this out. And thank you, Maggie, for letting me capture this from you. All right, So that gives you a sense for that. Now let me just clear my screen, and we'll get back to the particular shots that I want to share with you. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is where we started, right? This is the website. Again, this is the specific page that we were on, and let me get that back up for you. Again, I want you to be comfortable. Make sure you have a comfortable seat. You can take notes, and let's get into this website and the specifics. With this online application, you can request to receive it in paper and fill it out. I encourage you to do it online. That way you can save your progress and return to it. I know it took me, what I hear typically is 2 to 6 hours to complete. I think mine was closer to 2, maybe 3 hours. But I had several projects that I had to use to accumulate enough experience to count. And as I did that, I'd have to go back and find additional information and add that to my application. So I encourage you to complete it online. You can save your progress and return to it as you accumulate the information that you need for each project. All right, let's explore the steps. Now I showed you those online. There really were 8 parts, if you consider that. So these 8 correspond with these 8 steps here. So we're going to walk through each of those 8. Really, the majority of our time is going to be spent right here in the requirements section. All right, so that's where we're headed. Let's go into these first 3 to get started with here. Okay. Okay, so the first 3 are really straightforward. We have our contact address, contact information, and attained education. Those are straightforward. Let me give you some tips here related to those. Now, I'm going to offer you tips throughout our conversation today. Those are for a couple of reasons. Sometimes the form itself is not very straightforward, but the other reason is there are things that we've learned with our experience with students that if they mess those things up, they're more likely to get audited or to have their application fail or not be accepted. Okay, so we'll give you tips. One is right up front. When you create your account with PMI, you want to use the name that matches your government-issued photo ID. Later, when you go to take your test at a Prometric testing center, you'll be asked to show that government-issued photo ID. You want the name to match how you registered for the exam, so make sure those match up. If they don't, you may be able to change that through the profile on My PMI, or if not, you're able to contact them and they have their contact information listed there. Now, another tip, the education, attained education, and number 3, you'll indicate the highest level of education that you've received. If you've gone to a degree or received a degree at a 4-year university or college, then you list that. If you completed high school and don't have a further degree beyond that, then you would put that secondary education as your attained education. And that's going to impact the number of hours that you have to record later. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay, so those were the first 3. Now we're going to sink into the 4th of these 8, and it's on requirements, and there are several parts to the requirements. There are 4 subsections for the requirements. So if you look here, there's an overview that we're seeing here, then an eligibility worksheet, PM experience, and PM education. Okay, so the PMP requirements overview is, as it states, it gives you a sense for, okay, what are we looking for on the application from you, the applicant, and what are the required experience levels that you should have with projects? How much education should you have pertaining to the project management education specific that you need? And how do we walk those through? So the first area that we want to look at in detail is the required experience level. So let's take a look at that. So the required experience level really breaks down into 2 different areas. The first, if you have a 4-year degree, so again, you've graduated from a college or university, you need a minimum of 3 years, 36 months of non-overlapping project management experience. With that, you need to show 4,500 hours as a minimum of experience. So at least a 3-year period where you've been involved in projects and totaling 4,500 hours or more. Now, if you don't have a college degree, if you have a secondary degree like a high school diploma, then it's 5 years and 7,500 hours that they're looking for. Now, let me recap that for you. So here's just again, a recap of that. If you have a 4-year degree, in this grid or matrix, you can see you need 36 months and 4,500 hours. If you have a secondary degree, it's higher. You need 60 months and 7,500 hours. Okay, now let's walk this through practically. What PMI does is they say you have 8 years, an 8-year window that you can go back from your application date to accumulate that experience that we're asking for. So we can get to our requirement a number of different ways by using various projects that we've had experience with. So let's walk through an example. One of the common questions that people have is, what about overlapping projects? So we're going to take a look at that. First, let's deal with this other corner case. Let's say project A that I want to use in my application was a 12-month project, 1,300 hours. The problem is it goes just past my 8-year window. So only 9 months of it, or 975 hours, are going to count. So I have to prorate that one. That's okay. PMI will let you do that. And then let's look at this case of overlapping. So we have a project B, project C, which is taking place at the same time, and then project D butts up against project B. So I've got 3 projects there that accumulate quite a few, a lot of hours. But what about the months? In total, we're looking at project A all the way through project D. I've got 63 months and 3,575 hours. Now, this is very common. I know in my case, I was usually working on 2 or 3 projects at the same time. PMI says that's okay. The total hours count, like in this case, 3,575 hours. Those all count. However, because of the overlapping months, the months don't all count. You can't double count the months, right? So if I look at those, I may have 39 months instead of 63 months, which accumulate because of C taking place while B and D were taking place, having that overlap. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Again, what we're trying to do is accumulate the hours. In my case, I needed 4,500 hours. In this example, this gets me really close to it. I've got the 3-year experience there with the 39 months covered, but I've got to look and accumulate more hours to get to the total. But that's how the overlapping aspect of this could work, and also that other corner case of what if I have a project that's just outside part of that 8-year window. Okay. All right, now through this, we've gone through the overview. Now there's an eligibility worksheet that shows up. Throughout, we can check our progress on the eligibility worksheet and see how we're coming along in terms of acquiring the months, the hours, and the education hours required in order to submit our application. So that's a nice checkpoint for you to use. Now, moving on down the list, we have project management experience next. Project management experience is going to be where I literally go in and list the projects that I worked on. I describe those projects and I list the number of hours and the time frame related to it. Okay, so this is the first of 5 windows that we'll take a look at that are required to document each project. We have to document each project separately, and there's some basics that we have to provide. First of all, project title, the date, the how long I was involved with it, the through date, project role, and then the industry. So with the project role, remember, here's a tip. Choose your project role, not your title. I may have been a consultant or senior consultant. I'm looking for my project role. What did I do on the project instead? So there's a drop-down list there to help you choose the appropriate role for you. Remember, the point with the application is you want to demonstrate that you've led or directed tasks on these projects. Okay, the next screen goes further and asks for organization details. Describe the organization, provide information related to it, address, phone number, etc. And then the next screen, the organization contact. Think about this. This is the person who may be contacted by PMI if they need to verify your project experience. again, a tip, if you're audited, you want to let this person know. So if you have any question about, hey, does Sarah still work there? Do I have her correct email address? Do I have her right phone number? Reach out to Sarah and confirm that before you submit this application. Because if you're audited, then PMI is going to try to contact and verify with Sarah. So you want to make sure they've got a valid email address. Okay. All right, now here's another screen. The next screen pops up and says, all right, tell me how many hours you worked on this project. And instead of just giving a total, they want you to enter the hours by domain area. Now, we'll talk more about domains and process groups, but these are going to count towards your total 4,500 or 7,500 hours. And here you're within a project. How many hours did I spend in these 5 different areas? Initiating, planning, executing. Those are the first 3 that we see on this screen. Now, we'll talk more, and I'll give you a further description of those process groups or domains. Here's a quote from the PMP Certification Handbook. PMI is looking to see that you have experience across all 5 process groups, so you've been involved in every aspect of a project at some time. So here's the catch. You don't have to do all 5 for every single project. So you may have missed the initiating piece of a project because you came onto the team later. That's okay. The project still qualifies. You just want to make sure that one of the projects that you use in your application represents initiating activities as well. Okay. All right, so let's talk more about these process groups. Within the process framework, you remember me mentioning the PMBOK guide, that 756-page book. Well, the process framework describes 10 knowledge areas in 5 process groups. So I look at the 10 knowledge areas: integration, scope, schedule, cost, all the way down to stakeholder management. Those are like the big chapters of the book, and they literally are chapters in the PMBOK guide. Now, the tasks or activities that are carried out can be put into different groups. Those are called process groups or domains. So process group and domain are synonymous. Those could be things like initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, or closing. So you can see those different process names there. So PMI is looking for you to document experience in each of these 5 process groups somewhere on your application. Doesn't have to be all 5 covered for every project, but somewhere in the projects that you include in your application, you want to cover tasks or things, responsibilities that you had within each one of those 5. Okay, now here's a further tip. Here's just a little more definition of those 5 process groups and domains. And then over on the right-hand side, we're estimating the time typically spent by a project manager within those 5 process groups within a project. So typically you spend a little bit of time in initiating, a little bit of time in closing, maybe 5 to 10%. The bulk of your time is spent in planning, executing, monitoring, controlling. Now that can certainly vary depending on the type of project and the role that you had, but this gives you a guideline or a rule of thumb that you can use as you review the hours that you're putting in there by each project. All right, now back to the application. Within that PM experience, we're walking our way through the project, and we're to the point where we have to provide a high-level description of the project. We have to summarize experience on that project. So here's what you want to do. Here's some tips. You want to pay attention to these 4 requirements: the objective, the outcome, the role, and the domain. So the objective, you want to state what was planned. What was planned for this project? What was the goal or the target? And then the outcome, what was achieved? How close did we get to what we planned, right? Sometimes those are not the same. And then what was your role? Again, recalling that you need to be showing evidence that you led and directed tasks on a project. And then specific to a domain, you want to have specific comments in this description as to the hours that you've claimed for each of those 5 different domains or process groups. So you may include statements like, during project closure, I led the following, or in initiation, I did the following, or in planning, I was involved in this. Okay, so those are some things that you want to address. All right, so in this project management experience, here's a few more tips about the project descriptions. Again, if you claim hours in a domain, list those tasks in the summary. So by that, here's an example. If I claim 100 hours in initiating, I want to make sure that I describe some tasks or responsibilities that I had in the description that talk specifically about initiating. Now, it's okay to put abbreviations in there. You can use abbreviations like I've got listed there for the process groups. That's okay. Now, this is a real key. Here's one of those tips. This is a common reason that some people are audited. They claim hours in a domain, in that form where you put in the hours, not in total, but by those 5 breakouts. And then they forget to list any tasks in the summary description. So be sure to put that in the project description to avoid that red flag. Okay. All right. Another tip is to use PMI's language, right? Explain it in the way that they've written it. Some resources there will be the PMBOK guide or the PMP exam content outline. Within that content outline, the tasks are spelled out as well, so you can see some things there. Now, here's some examples that we'll just add as well. You may use words like led, initiated, consulted, recommended, identified, created, contributed, tested. So those are words that you may use to describe some of the tasks or activities that you had on a project as you describe that project description or write it out. Okay, now the nice thing is as you accumulate projects and add those to your application, they're going to be totaled. So you'll have a summation that goes on. That experience worksheet is going to show you where you stand, how you're coming along towards that total of 4,500. So in this case, you can see the total, those that are required, and then just how many more hours that I need or how many months I need. So that's a nice, useful worksheet there. Just keep adding projects until you hit that total. Now, we're going to switch gears to the last piece of PM education related to the requirements. Now, a lot of questions come up. What type of education? How many hours? What qualifies? What doesn't? First, let's just look at the steps of how you document it. Then we'll deal with some of these higher level questions as well. Okay, so first of all, how do I do that? All right, again, I'm in the requirements section, and I've gone through overview, eligibility worksheet, PM experience, and now we're looking at PM education, that final piece. So within that, there are instructions to think about the project management education that you've had, and then either select from something that's online or add new. So let's assume we don't have anything listed with PMI, so we're adding a new education activity. So here's the form to fill that out. Again, you've got this basic stuff there: the course title, the institution name, the start and end date for the course, the number of hours, and then qualifying hours. You could take a course that just touches on project management. Maybe it's a 12-hour course and 3 hours of it qualify because they cover project management topics. So you would add that. Now, here's some tips. One thing that you'll see is you're required to prove 35 contact hours. They're called contact hours. Don't be thrown off by that. A contact hour equals 1 hour. PMI refers to it as formal education. So that would be something that you don't get just by reading a book. It's something that you would get in a classroom setting. Could be an online course, but it needs to be structured. There's also one of the nice things to know here, another tip, is there's no time limit. So if you took a course, we'll say 12 years ago at a university that was on project management and, it was like a full semester, then you could count, if you can go back and find the dates and documentation, you could use that. So we had an 8-year window for project experience, but when it comes to education, there is no time limit. Now, one last piece there on the final sentence on the page there, Velociteach, the instructor-led class that we offer in the Insight course that goes along with it, those count. Those are official. Those, count as contact hours with PMI. Those are formal education in project management. So that's another source as well. All right, now as you submit those, you're going to be able to keep tracking those until you get to 35. Just got an example here. This is a course that was taken back in 2010. It counted as 27 hours. Tours of 35, I still need 8, so I just keep adding those education experiences and checking my overview to see if I'm there. All right, PM education. Okay, we've made it through the heart of it. Describing the projects is where most of the questions come up. So now we're going to keep moving along, but we've covered that fourth process, or the fourth piece on requirements. Now we're going to move into optional information. Optional information. You're going to be asked, who is the primary referral source for you? There are 3 choices today. It's employer required, employer suggested, or personal development. So you just choose one. Have you taken a certification prep course presented by a PMI chapter? Yes or no is the response there. So you make these choices and move on. No, you can see there's not a required field on these. So optional information, that one's nice and easy. And now 6 is certificate. So looking at the certificate, the question here is, how do you want your name to appear on the certificate? When you earn the PMP, you're going to get a nice frameable certificate, and it's going to have your name on it. So how do you want to have your name listed? That does not have to match your government issued ID. So this is a chance for you to change the name or how it's presented if you wish to. So that's how it's going to appear on your certificate. Okay, now the 7th item is the agreement. You're going to have as you work your way through the list, you're going to have a long agreement that you need to read and review, and you've got the traditional I agree button at the bottom of the page. You click on that and you move along. All right, now step 8 of 8 is review and submit. Let's take a look at that. So there's a nice form that pops up here, a nice page that shows you your status, how things stand on your different steps that you've gone through, your contact information, all the different pieces that we've done. You know, I need to add more project management experience, more PM education in order to complete this. So there's a nice status display and report there. There's also the opportunity at this point to download my application. If I want to download and save a copy, I can do that. I can actually, this is hypothetical that we're showing here, but I can actually log into my account with PMI and download my application from years and years ago when I filled it out and took it for the PMP exam. So that's still available as well. And then obviously the last thing would be the submit application. That's not active yet. I can't choose it because I've still got things I've got to take care of. And you got a click button there that you'd have to satisfy as well. Okay. All right. So now we're done, right? We've stepped through our 8 steps. We've made it all the way through. We're feeling good about things. And then, hey, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. We could possibly get audited. If we were to get audited, we'd want to know what to do, right? So let's talk about the audit, just in case. I know you're not going to be audited, but just in case, let's talk about it. All right, so before you submit your payment, you'll receive an email from PMI if you are audited. If you're not audited, they'll move you right along with an email saying your application has been received now and accepted. Now you can make payment and schedule your exam. For a few unlucky souls, you'll receive notification that you have been audited. Now, rest assured, relax. You've probably done nothing wrong. PMI randomly audits just to maintain the integrity of the application and the exam. Now, again, following the tips that we've discussed will help you avoid some of the common mistakes, but know that PMI has random audits. This is actually a quote out of the handbook. Again, PMI reserves the right to select any candidate to be audited, etc. So, all right, in the case you are audited, they're going to give you very clear instructions as to next steps, and essentially you're going to mail these pieces of information back to PMI. A copy of your diploma or equivalent, something proving that attained education that you've documented, a copy of a certificate of completion, again, proving the PM education that you had. Okay, so think about that when you're thinking through, okay, what course do I want to, use or courses do I want to use to get at 35 hours? Do I have certificates of completion? Do I have paperwork that I can back that up? And then the final piece there, signatures of a manager. So we talked about that when we were describing the project experience. That shows the PM experience, right? It meets that criteria of 4,500 hours and 36 months, or 60 months and 7,500 hours. So I'm wanting to make sure that I list someone that I'm able to go back to and reach in case I do get audited. So think that through. They'll likely receive an email from PMI saying, hey, this individual is claiming project experience. Can you verify it? And they receive the email, they respond to it, and then you clear the audit and move on. You should hear from PMI in 5 to 7 business days after they've received your documentation that you've mailed to them. So you fill out the audit information, you submit that via regular U.S. mail to PMI, and then you should hear from them within 5 to 7 business days. Now, you're finally to the point where you can pay for the exam, pay for the application. We want to make a recommendation. It just makes sense to join PMI. Let's do the math and walk it through. If you pay the PMI membership fee, it's $139. There are a lot of benefits that come along with that. But one is obvious. You get a discounted fee for the PMP exam. So you can see the total with my membership fee plus the reduced or discounted exam fee is $544. For a non-member, the PMP exam fee is $555. So there's your difference. Now, another thing to consider is once you apply for the exam and receive the authorization to take it, you have 1 year that you're eligible to take it, and you have 3 attempts to pass it in that year. If you failed the first time, you have to retake, then there's a retake or a re-examination fee. For a PMI member, it's $100 less than for the non-member. So that's another thing to consider with those exam fees. Okay. All right, now let's just recap. We've talked through the PMP exam application. We've looked at screenshots of the specific pages. Now let's do a recap. One thing we know we have to do is complete 35 contact training hours. We talked about that. Then we apply online. As a matter of fact, we encourage our students, go ahead and start applying online, even as you're taking using Insight or before you even come to our class. You can go ahead and complete almost all of your online application with your project experience, and you've got 90 days to complete it. Okay. So again, you can join PMI, that's optional. And then once you complete that online application, within 5 days, you'll hear back from PMI. You'll either get that unlucky news that you've been audited, very rare, or you'll receive confirmation that they've accepted your application and now you're able to take the exam. So audit, yes or no, if you don't have it, or if you do have it. If you have the audit, then you've got 90 days to pass that audit, to submit the information to PMI. Again, you'll hear back from them within 5 to 7 days. And either way, then you'll get to pay for the exam after you've passed the audit, or if you weren't audited in the first place. So when you pay for the exam, you receive an ID code. You'll receive a email from PMI giving you a code and instructions, and included in those instructions or a link. There's a link in that to prometric.com, and that's where you go to schedule your exam. So it describes explicit details as to, okay, here's your ID code. Click on this link, go pick a location near you and a date that's available, and schedule your exam. That's the way it works. So again, through all this, once you've received the ID code, at that point, the clock starts ticking. You have 1 year. Now that your application has been received and accepted by PMI and you've passed any audit that may have come along, you have 1 year of eligibility for the exam, and you have 3 attempts within that 1 year to pass. Let's talk just for a minute about that PMP exam. I've been nibbling at it, so let me just talk about it directly. It's a standardized test. It has 200 questions. They're all multiple choice, and you have 4 hours to complete the exam. It is a pass or fail exam. And by that, I mean you will literally get a piece of paper at the end of your exam experience. At the end of those 4 hours, you'll get a piece of paper that says you have either passed or failed. Now, that's an interesting piece of paper, that score report. Let's blow that up and take a closer look at it. All right, so there's one word on this report that makes all the difference. There's only one word that really matters, and that word is a 4-letter word, pass. So you'll see on the score report, you'll see where you are. And okay, here's the target. I need to be somewhere to the right of that point in order to pass. And in this case, we're way over here. We passed easily. And you can see your performance by domain. Again, the 5 different process groups or domains. You can see above target for all except for closing, where this example is just on target. Okay, so that's the score report. Once you've taken the exam and passed it, you are a PMP. You can put PMP on your business card or after your name at that point. All right, now Velociteach is here to help you succeed. We've mastered the explanation of the complex. We've taken that 756-page PMBOK guide and put it in a language that you can understand. We've made it relatable, and we've tried to appeal to all different learning styles. So we have everything from quick reference guides to that's a 6-page quick reference guide, a full textbook on it, apps for flashcards and for conversations. We have an 8-hour conversation audio set that you can download, and we have online access as well. That's different voices, different write-ups on all the information you need to know to pass the exams. All this information, all this stuff comes to you, and we give you a money-back guarantee. So we feel like we can get you there and make you successful as you study and prep for this exam. Now, here's the fine print. This is all the stuff that I just quickly showed you pictures of, including our post-class support related to that. Okay, so that's all the stuff that we give you to help you be successful in this difficult exam. Now, let me just wrap things up here. All right, our agenda was to talk briefly about PMI, briefly about the PMP credential, and even about the exam, but really focus on the PMP exam application. We've talked through the PMP exam application and given you some examples and some tips, things to avoid, things to look out for, and further explanations of what PMI is looking for. If you have any questions as you think this through, in this case, she looks very happy, very content. She's just motoring through this exam application with no problems at all. Hey, if you have a problem, if you have a question, reach out to us, contact us. Here is an email address, info@velociteach.com, or our number. We're also available to chat. You can just go to velociteach.com and click on the chat button. But we wish you the best as you pursue this PMP, and we want to be here to help you, whether it's to fill out the application or to think through, specific exam strategy. We're here for you. So I wish you the best, and with that, we will sign off.